Hi everyone, Deb here with a quick Q&A from a dog walker that I met walking my dogs, and I turned her on to a client who happens to be the dog of my nephew and his wife. And he's a young dog, really sweetheart guy, good temperament, but very high energy. And I've worked with this dog before, so that's why I wanted to answer this question with a video instead of just a quick text saying, send me video. I need to just know what I'm talking about here or what I'm seeing. So anyway, here's the background story. So PAX is a Bernedoodle, and that's a breed I had no familiarity with beforehand. He's really a sweet guy. He gets along great with their now, I think he's about 15 or 16-month-old baby. But he's got like the energy of a poodle, and he's got kind of the heavy bones of the Bernese Mountain Dog. So it will be in his best interest to also learn how to chill out so that he stays orthopedically healthy throughout his long life. But he is just a sweetheart dog. So here's what we worked on the first time I got together with my nephew. The problem was that when they would take PAX to the dog park, that he didn't want to come when they were leaving. And this is a pretty common problem because dogs know that the fun is over. So because I know this dog, and there was one thing in particular that I thought would work for him based on something he did when he was with the family. And when my family gets together for gatherings, that he chills out, is just laying there, in the family room with everybody. But when any person leaves, he goes and follows that person, and he doesn't come back until that person comes back. And as soon as everybody's back together, he lays down and relaxes. So that made me think, okay, let's work with this instinct to want to keep his group of people together, his family pack together, whatever we are to them. And so what we did in the dog park is, first let him do his own thing. And whenever he was going in one direction, my nephew and I, we just turned around and we went in the other direction. And eventually Pax would notice us and he would run by us. But as soon as he passed, we would whip around and go the other way again so that he would see we were turning. So we were constantly creating distance. And even though at first he was also creating distance, after about, I think it was probably 10, maybe 15 minutes, he started catching on to the fact that we were the ones walking away. And so then he started offering some attention, at which point my nephew engaged with some nice, touch. The dog really enjoys touch. And then he sent him off to go do his own thing again. So in this one session, we went from the dog completely ignoring my nephew and me. In this case, he'd never seen me in a dog park because I don't do dog parks, but anyway, side point, to noticing that we were going away and running towards us and accepting some praise and some petting and a little treat and being sent off again. And over the course of this one session, we inserted a gentle collar touch. And I want to emphasize gentle collar touch, not collar grab. And I know that term collar grab might not be intended to be taken literally, but I see a lot of people doing collar grabs. And based on what the dogs look like when their collar's grabbed, you could do classical deconditioning and get the dog to be okay with that. But my point of view is, why do it in the first place? Just touch the dog's collar. And that's all you need to do to touch to, get a hold of the collar. So no problem. Anyway, by the end of the session, he was basically keeping an eye on us and following us around. There was no issue leaving the dog park. So at that point, I recommended they use a similar tactic on off-leash hikes. And the issue with this dog on the off-leash hikes was that as soon as he'd be off-leash, he would just take off, storming up the trail, go around the bend. They couldn't see him. He never got lost, but that made them uncomfortable for obvious reasons. So my recommendation, which I can tell you in advance worked really, really well, was to walk him on leash for quite a ways. The first reason I suggest that is so that the dog doesn't start associating getting out of the car with running. Because what that can lead to is a dog that starts whining and even barking and carrying on in the car because they're anticipating what's coming next. So if what's coming next is some leash walking, followed by off leash when the dog has kind of settled into walking on the leash, now the dog is anticipating a lower arousal activity, which should not necessarily lead to as much potential for crazy acting dog in the car. And one other note about that is when I get to a trailhead, before I let my dogs out of the car, I do have a fair amount of stuff to do. I got to get poop bags and I got to get, all my stuff organized. So I am kind of futzing around the car. But even if I didn't have to, I think I would intentionally futz around the car, whether it's check my email or like dust the dashboard. It could always use dusting, so that my dogs don't even associate stopping the car at the trailhead with Yahoo activity. They associate that with nothing much happening until I get out of the car. And I think if we're really careful about that and we don't reward our dogs for being amped up, that we can actually have a pleasant experience getting ready to go for a hike versus having a dog that's barking its head off or jumping around in the car if you don't crate your dog, which I do crate my dog as a side point. So anyway, so that's a little side note. So once they've got PAX far enough away from the trailhead starting point, so that means away from cars, my next suggestion was, to release him and to send him off like the same way you sent him off in the dog park, and let him see that you and your wife are going the other direction. And he did notice, and he did come running to them and ran by them. And again, they did the same dog park action. They just turned and went the other way. And so eventually PAX started going, I don't know which way you're going, so I'm just going to kind of stay with you because you are very unpredictable people here, and this is not what I like. So it worked like a charm. And the other thing they want to work on is a more reliable recall in general. The great thing about this type of activity is you're actually creating a recall before you're putting it on cue, just like we train any other behavior. And often people exclude recall training from that rule about first you get exactly the behavior you want and then you put a cue, a verbal cue onto that behavior. So this allows you to keep getting the dog racing towards you, and you can praise and you can give a little piece of food, you can touch the collar, you can do the kind of touch your dog likes, and then send them off again while you're building the value for a recall before you're even putting it on cue. So by the time you put it on cue, your dog is coming towards you and will respond 100% of the time. So here's the tricky part with the dog walker. She's got a plan. I'm taking this dog for a hike. And what that usually means for people who are going for a hike is that we are going for a hike, meaning I'm going for a hike in one direction, I'm going X number of miles, and dog, you are going with me. And that is a fine goal or plan to have, as long as your dog's plan, or it's not really a plan, but your dog's expression of where that dog is conducive to you doing that. So my perspective is, if that was my dog, I would be willing to drop my plan for a vertical, I'll call it vertical, but a forward motion hike to getting my hike in, but going back and forth and back and forth. And I don't think it's going to take many reps of going back and forth to actually be able to go in one direction. But it's really, for me, about observing my dog and connecting with the dog as he expresses himself to be in that moment. So every hike is going to start with that, and observe my dog and connect with the dog in front of me. Give that dog what he needs from me to be successful. I think that's enough on that. And one little side note, something I really do with my dogs, I think is important, is during our off-leash hikes, they do go on and off leash a little bit, so that when I call them to me or need to put them on leash for any reason, it's not a bummer, it's just part of what off-leash hiking is like. So in contrast, if your dog is always off leash and the only time you put them on leash is when they've been a bad dog and maybe chased some wildlife down the mountain, you finally got them back, less likely to want to come back to you. So I think it's important to mix in a little leash time. And for me, the reason my dogs go on and off leash during hikes is I'm watching them, and I'm watching what they're communicating about the sensory experience they're having: scent, smell, sight. That Dakota is a great communicator because of his search and rescue training as a young dog. So he tells me what's coming around the next bend in very specific terms. He'll let me know it's just people. He'll let me know it's a bicyclist, which there's a lot of mountain bikers where we hike. And he'll let me know if it's a dog. And also he'll let me know if there's wildlife in the area, and in which case I do call him to me and we all walk on leash for a while, because wildlife in my area includes mountain lions, bobcats, and coyotes, amongst other things, which I don't want Dakota to actually experience firsthand. So let's see, I think I've covered that. On leash, off leash, be willing to change your plan based on the dog that shows up. And I guess I'll finish it with, you have to be willing to start over and over and over. And when you are willing to continue to be with the dog at whatever level they are able to function at, that the beginning part may seem like you're not making any progress, but once you get through whatever it is the dog needs to understand to be a cooperative partner with you versus do his own thing, that once you make that first step, then the other 9 steps, or however many steps there are in this analogy, the other ones just go boom, 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 boom. And yet, with my dogs, even though they're both, I'd call them 99% recall, which on a side note is something that Sue Sternberg turned me on to, this concept that there's no such thing as 100% recall, that even the most solid recall dog might not come under certain circumstances, and I found that to be true with Lil, who's a 99.9% recall dog, and Dakota, I'd call him a good 98%. So he can be a little bit slow now and then if he's doing something. He does come on the first recall, but he doesn't necessarily whip around the moment I call, which now that I think about it, I'm okay with that. That if I'm calling him on the trail and he just finishes a little sniffing session, like a 1/1002, about that long, and then comes, I think that is okay. So there, I just learned something new about myself, that I've relaxed that need to have my dog whip around like a robot. So it's never too late to learn something new about yourself and your dog. Hope you enjoyed this quick question and answer session. And if you have any questions about anything I've talked about, please make a note in the comment below and I will answer that question. And also just wanted to finish with Ocean Foundations is open for registration February 1st through 8th. Once it's closed, it won't open again for, I don't know, like 4 to 6 months. It takes a lot to get the next session up and running, so I can only do so many per year. And the people in Ocean, that they get a lot of personalized attention. And basically, the Ocean Foundations is different than this free Ocean for Dogs group in that it's set up to take people kind of step by step through a process that helps you implement all of these principles that I've been talking about in this free Ocean group. So if these principles make sense to you and yet you think, well, like you never remember to think about them when you're training, Ocean Foundations might be a good way for you to develop those new habits. So hope you're having a great day and see you in Ocean. The free group or Foundations, they're both well worth your time. Bye.